Hi, this is Rick Yates, Technical Services Manager for GGS Pro in Griffin. Today's short video is going to be on powdery mildew control, mostly in greenhouses, but a lot of this information will apply to nurseries as well. As always, when we're talking about pesticide, it's really important that we emphasize that we may mention excerpts from a pesticide label, but it's up to the grower to read and follow the entire pesticide label. And I want to make it clear also that although we'll be talking about products that we have a lot of confidence in, there may be some other products out there that are also effective and labeled properly for this use. Powdery mildew can look quite different depending on the species of plant that it occurs on. Most of your powdery mildews are specific to a certain species of plant. There is some crossover, and we'll talk about that in a minute. This is more, I would say, the traditional look of powdery mildew. When you get into some of the succulents, you can see they can look quite different. These actually are depressions in the epidermis of the leaf that really would not be what most people would think of as typical powdery mildew symptoms. And the powdery mildew that attacks calibrachoas is very difficult to diagnose sometimes because it often leaves no white powder at all. In fact, we saved this picture because it is unusual to see this much white powder evidence. So we need to really be sure we know what we're dealing with in these cases. A lot of times what we see with calibrachoa on powdery mildew is a lot of yellow leaves down near the base of the plant. Those leaves may even wilt and flag down, and we still don't see any obvious signs of the white powder there. So work with your favorite plant pathologist, or you can contact GGS Pro to make sure we're diagnosing it properly before we start treating. Just circle that for you. So what do we know about powdery mildew that can help us? Well, we know that the infective spores are called conidia, and once they start to form, they are easily spread throughout the greenhouse. Your routine air movement that you have for ventilation and HAF fans and so forth can blow the spores around. Splashing water from irrigations and also just handling plants can do it. So it's really important that we scout well and catch the infection early so we can try to limit all this sporulation. In fact, if you catch it really early, would advise you to pick off the infected leaves and put them in a bag, remove them from the greenhouse before you start your treatment. Want to make clear that both leaf surfaces can be affected, so the white powder and the symptoms can appear on the upper and lower leaf surfaces, which makes it distinctly different from downy mildew. With the exception of Rudbeckia, the sporulation always occurs on the lower leaf surfaces. Powdery mildew is an obligate parasite, so that tells us that typically we're bringing it in on plant material. And if we do a great job of cleaning up at the end of the season, including raking up all the plant trash and so forth and off the floors of the greenhouses, we should be able to start clean the next time we open that house up, at least clean in terms of powdery mildew. We also know that high humidity and poor air circulation will increase sporulation and therefore ramp up the spread. It is interesting that as temperatures get above 86 degrees, it greatly inhibits powdery mildew. I've heard plant pathologist Margie Daughtry say that powdery mildew is generally worse on the shoulders of the season as we start to get into the warmer weather of late spring and early summer, and then again as we transition from late summer into early fall, when you have warm day temperatures but cool nights, and that seems to favor it in most cases. Even though high humidity does favor powdery mildew, free moisture on the leaf surfaces does not. In fact, it'll actually inhibit it. Years ago, when we had a tremendous outbreak of powdery mildew on poinsettias, it skated through propagation because with all the moisture on the top of the leaf surfaces, there was no symptoms to see there. And then once it got into the greenhouse environment and the conditions were more favorable, that's where it exploded. I mentioned there is a little bit of crossover in powdery mildews, and the one that I think is most important for us to know about is that the powdery mildew that we saw in Altansium verbena will also cross over to your cucurbit, so a lot of your vine crops, and calibrachoa and calendula. So we thank Nora Catlin for that information. So let's get into treating it. Mode of Action 3 has been around for a long time, and there's a lot of really good powdery mildew products there. I would caution you that some strains of powdery mildew are not very sensitive to the mode of action 3s anymore. Now that could vary between products. I do want to point out also that Postiva is one that we're expecting to be registered soon. It has a federal registration, but it's not registered for all the states. So as of this recording here in early May of 2021, it's not registered, but we expect it. And it'll be unique in that it combines a mode of action 7, and I don't think there's any other mode of action 3 and 7 combos out there. So we're expecting good things out of Postiva when it arrives. Affirm is polyoxin D, and it has proven to be a very good powdery mildew product. It's a quick knockdown and 7 days, maybe a little longer, residual control. It is safe on open blooms. It's registered for a large number of vegetable transplants, so we'd like Affirm a lot. We also use it for botrytis. Millstop is kind of, in our mind at least, a powdery mildew special. It's an extremely quick knockdown. It doesn't have any residual control, but to knock down an existing population before you move on to other products, or tank mix with perhaps something like one of the microbial fungicides based on Bacillus subtilis, which we'll cover in a minute. That tank mix is also very effective, as that adds preventative control to the knockdown of millstop. These are products that, by and large, are mostly preventative controls. I'll note some exceptions there. So the other page was mostly knockdowns. These are preventatives that would give you a longer residual control. And we'll start in the middle of the slide this time. The mode of action 11 products are the strobilurons, and these should be thought of exclusively as preventative, but they're very good preventatives, and they have typically have a long residual from a foliar spray. Moving over to the left, these are some combination products, and the combination of a mode of action 7 product along with the strobilurons allows for a knockdown. So you will get knockdown from these products, but then you have the benefit of the strobiluron residual control that hangs on for a while. It's very useful. And then last but not least, mode of action 44 are fungicides that are based on different strains of Bacillus subtilis, and these are all very effective as preventative. So they don't have a knockdown, but 7 to 14 days of residual preventative control. And so I mentioned you could tank mix that with millstop, or on a preventative basis, they can go in standalone. These are all really good products. I hope that you found this webinar useful. If you have any questions, you can contact us with the contact information that's on this slide. And if you have ideas for future videos, we'd like to hear that as well. Thanks so much for tuning in.